So that's why I was consciously trying to figure out, look, this is where it's looking.
Sit next to
Yeah.
Ken.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you very much. I want to welcome you to the Emergency Service Council meeting of June 15th, 2017. Can I have a roll call, please?
Atherton. Belmont. Brisbane.
Just in time.
Burlingame.
Emily Beach, present.
Homa.
We saved the spot.
Daly City.
Glenn Sylvester, present.
East Palo Alto. Foster City. Half Moon Bay. Hillsborough.
Marie Drunk, present. You okay?
Menlo Park. Millbrae.
Ann Schneider, present.
Pacifica.
Sue Degree, present.
Portola Valley.
Somebody else will come.
Redwood City.
Ian Bain.
San Bruno.
Rico Medina here.
San Carlos.
Matt Burkott here.
San Mateo. South San Francisco.
Mark Adiego.
Woodside. County of San Mateo.
Here, Madam Clerk, I believe we have a quorum. Is that correct?
We do have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Item number 2, approval of minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from April 20th?
So move. Oh, I'm sorry.
Second.
All those in favor?
Wait.
Okay, moving on. Thank you.
I had 3 edits,
Must
but
be all the exuberance from the Warriors parade. Okay, item 3, operational area report. Steve Mahaly.
Yes, good evening. I'm Steve Mahaley, one of the district coordinators here at OES, to go over the attachment A, which I believe you all have a copy of it in front of you. This is a snapshot of what's going on in the county emergency-wise that we provide for each quarter. Interesting things on there. The second box, fire mutual aid. This past quarter, there were 3 2-alarm fires. That's about average for in the county. Fortunately, we have not had anything go further beyond that. And I don't think OES hasn't been called out to help with any sheltering issues lately. So no big fires with no big people displaced. Maybe a house here and there, but no apartment buildings certainly. The third box down is the hazmat team response. There's 6 responses this quarter. Well, 7 actually if you count there, but most of them are illegal dumping. Unfortunately, that's a common thing we have an issue with in the county. People just, instead of taking it to the proper disposal place where they have to pay for it to be disposed, they'll just leave it somewhere, and then we end up finding it, not sure what it is, and we have to do a whole hazmat investigation to see what it is before we can dispose of it. Going down further, lots of SMC alerts and TENS notifications. That's really popular. The SMC alert system works really great going to people's phones. We encourage everyone to sign up. We've signed up a lot of people lately, especially with the county employees. But we just really encourage you to get that out in your cities. It's a very valuable way to get information. For a little further down, OES staff report, a lot of plans we're always working on. We're updating some plans now. Lieutenant's going to mention some in a little bit. We have many different plans. We're always working on updating different plans. and coordinate with other agencies with their plans as well. There's state, federal, there's regional plans. The Coast Guard has plans for the Bay. We have all kinds of plans we're always working on. It's a never-ending process that we're always working on. A little further down, just more about the exercises. We're always doing exercises. Just today, or exercises and training, just today, about how many people were in the class? How many? 49 people were in that earthquake class we've had for the past 4 days right next door here. Had this, the culmination of which today was a big exercise where we actually had an earthquake for about 3 hours, and they practiced responding to that. But this is a good snapshot of what we do at OES, and law enforcement as well is on here. But if you have any questions, please let me know. And I'll also be here at the end of the meeting if you have any questions then as well.
Great, thank you so much, Steve. That brings us on to old business, the Skylon Radio Tower construction update. Mr. Yusan, Tony?
Unfortunately, I don't think he is here today, and I did not receive notice that he was not going to be able to attend. So
Okay.
I'd ask you to pass that over at this point.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Item 2 under old business, SMC alert. Mr. Norris?
Thank you, Jeff Norris with the Office of Emergency Services. I'm very pleased to let everyone know that the numbers on SMC Alert continue to climb. We're getting more and more subscribers each month, and we've had a notable increase in subscribership. Colma has actually doubled their subscribership in the last 60 days.
Dead or rising.
Oh, I don't think so.
Oh,
You're on videotape.
New Como
That was her
wasn't here,
inside
so.
voice.
But we are having some excellent progress. We did a lot of outreach during the county fair at the Preparedness Day, which was just last Saturday, and we even have an event scheduled which is going to be coming up on this coming Saturday in the town of Pacifica. So we have a lot of events coming up. We're also looking at how we can further implement the rapid sign-up process, which is for some people much easier than going to the website. All they have to do is text their zip code to 888777. And we still encourage everybody to use the full sign-up from the webpage at smcalert.info. But for those who have difficulty with that, we can still get the word to them. We're using that system not quite daily, but we certainly have a large number of notifications going out, far less than we did during the peaks of the storms. So if there's any questions about the SMC alert,
Ms. Schneider?
We had an incident last Friday, and I hadn't thought that I could have sent out something to sign people up. But for that type of attack, would that have sent an alert out saying, please, what to do with your children that are at the library, that kind of information? I hate to use a negative to create a positive, but I may as well.
No, I well understand. There are generally jumps in subscribership right after a major incident. Word of mouth spreads that it's a system that's available, and then we have bumps in signups. Yes, all of the police and fire agencies of the county have the ability to send messages out on the SMC alert. They don't have to rely on contacting us at OES to send those messages out. And yes, your local policing agency could have put that message out.
Okay, and since I'm already signed up, I would have seen it had ours have done that.
Oh, pardon?
I would have, I'm on all of San Mateo County's alerts. I didn't get them either by phone or by computer, so I'm assuming that my folks didn't do that, so
They
something to
may
bring up.
not have. So
We hope we never have another thing like that again, but I'd like to be prepared.
Great.
So actually, here's one from just this week. When the city of San Mateo contacted us, they said, can you put out a message for us alerting about the power outage that was affecting San Mateo and Burlingame, and it was right on the border, so we sent it to the residents of San Mateo and Burlingame. By using the address-based information, we sent it to 10,000 people, and by the system where individuals can select communities of interest to them, that brought in another 10,000 people. So more than 20,000 people received this message relating to this power outage. This is a map that we obtained from PG&E. that shows the outline of the outage area. And we at OES are looking into how we can go forward using mapping to make the messages on SMC Alert even more useful to people.
Great, thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Mr. Norris. Yeah, Marie. Yes, Marie. Yeah.
So my question is, you just mentioned about the rapid sign up, that texting to 888777 and typing your zip code. What does that lead you to? Because I mean, the official sign up, you have to customize your SMC alert program so that you can select your cities and you can, you can customize it so it's tailored to your interest. In this case, what does that entail?
Okay, if you use the texting your zip code to 888777, you are strictly going to receive messages that are map-based and targeted to that specific zip code's area. You're not going to get all of the features of signing up on the full site where you can place your email, your text number, select communities of interest, put in full addresses. You're just going to get the blanket for when that zip code is sent to. But for some people who have difficulties with computers, it's a much easier way for them to sign up, so we can still get them on the system. At the moment, we have about 10,000 people signed up through the rapid sign-up system, and about 60,000 signed up through the main system.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Norris.
Thank you.
Moving forward, communication plan, Victoria Castro. Ms. Castro?
Hello. My name is Victoria Castro, and I am the intern for the Office of Emergency Services. The Office of Emergency Services is constantly looking for new and exciting ways to engage and educate our residents and communities on emergency preparedness. And this evening, I will be sharing about one of my favorite projects called Prepared Puppet Pals. Prepared Puppet Pals is a family-oriented show which is designed for children between the ages of 3 and 10. The vision of this project is to encourage our communities to become more resilient and prepared for emergencies where it matters the most, in the home, with the people that matter the most, their families. To learn about these topics, children, along with their families, will be introduced to 3 different characters: Frank Fire, who is from Daly City, Leah Law from Pacifica, and Dante Dispatch from Redwood City. Each character represents various aspects of San Mateo County Emergency Services. Currently, OES is wrapping up our focus group that is assisting us in identifying how the characters will look and reflect our wonderfully diverse communities and unique cultural backgrounds. Videos will promote services such as the county's public notification system, SMC Alert, and highlight important topics that include earthquake safety, emergency preparedness, flood safety, tsunami preparedness, and more. Videos will be released on a monthly basis, and each month will be dedicated to one emergency preparedness topic, which you will see in our OES Supervisor Stephanie Murdy's presentation shortly. Videos will also star special guests who may be subject matter experts or influential community leaders. I am excited to share that we already have the first 6 months worth of content and are ready to begin production in the near future. I thank you for your time and will accept any questions if you have them.
Are there any questions for Ms. Castro? Seeing none. Thank you, Ms. Castro. Okay. We're off to the Hazard Mitigation Maintenance Plan. Mr. Spencer. Bart.
Good evening. It was mentioned earlier today that many of us participated in earthquake exercise and training this past week, which I think is useful because I'm here to update you on the hazard mitigation plan, which ties in very well with what we were training on. So about a year ago, we engaged in the hazard mitigation plan. We're currently in the maintenance portion of that plan. It's a 5-year plan, and over the course of 5 years, there are action items that each of the jurisdictions that participated in have to show some kind of movement on those action items. And each jurisdiction developed their own action items in their annex. We engaged with the same vendor that we used for the plan and are using them to provide a web-based tool so that each jurisdiction can go online and update their action items throughout the year. Each year, each jurisdiction needs to submit a report to OES through this web-based tool, and then we will submit that report to FEMA. The deadline for those reports is September 1st. So we're encouraging jurisdictions to keep up with their maintenance plans and keep fulfilling their action items and putting some kind of notation in there of what they do so that we can submit the report on September 1st. These reports are essential because it keeps the jurisdictions qualified for hazard mitigation grant funding as well as recovery dollars if we ever have a disaster. That's the update for us. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them for you.
Great, thank you so
Great,
much,
thank you.
Mr. Spencer. Item 4, Emergency Management Support Team, Bill Eichner. Mr. Eichner.
Good evening. Hey, I'm here tonight just to give you a quick update on the EMST, Emergency Management Support Team project. The EMST work group continues to make progress and expand some of the original scope. As you recall, this team is a team where you can get individuals that'll come in and help the EOC if you have a localized event particularly. So this is a couple of the areas that we're looking at right now is building inspectors. That's another area that we're going to see how that can fit into the EMST framework. And this is one area, in my opinion, that most cities could use that help. 2 examples that come to mind would be the pipeline explosion, and the other one is the winter storm flooding. So once you have all those buildings damaged and so forth, you need to have those building inspectors out there either red tagging or whatever it may be for that particular structure. The other area that there's a potential need for or a need for is PIOs, Public Information Officers. So the ICS structure, Incident Command Structure, supports PIOs, and they have different acronyms for that, but we're going to try to figure out how that can work with the localized emergency management support teams. So the work group will continue looking at this and how best to integrate these in the areas of the EMST framework that we've presented to you. And I'll keep you briefed on how we're going. So, any questions?
Great. Are there any questions? All right,
Thank you.
thank you very much. New business, OES responsibilities, Lieutenant Fogarty. Bill?
Thank you very much, Chair. What I want to do is just give a brief overview of what it is that Office of Emergency Services actually does. There are some questions that recently come up about what it is that Office of Emergency Services does versus what law enforcement does versus what fire does versus what EMS does. So I think you will see on the screen listed in front of you several activities that we recently had, or not so recently had, as the case would be. We had the San Bruno fire. We had a fire out at the Shirley Recycling Center. On the top left, you see our Storm Patrol, which are volunteers that are out making sure that the coast is safe or other unincorporated areas. And then the bottom left, you also see a recent situation we had up in the hills of Woodside where we were able to rescue somebody who had been lost as a hiker. The next slide you see is basically the numbers and geographical information that we are trying to keep track of on a daily basis. A lot of times in San Mateo County, people are unaware of what it is that we have. I like to highlight just a few, just to call out. If you notice, there are 3 airports that are operating, an average of 1,500 flights a day. In addition to that, you have 60,000 Caltrain passengers daily that are traveling through, along with an additional 36,000 Samtrans passengers. Of note, 2 different things for me. There are over 2,285 miles of PG&E pipeline. And finally, I think most importantly, you see 272,000 housing residents or housing units. The biggest thing, obviously, is we have over 758,000 people that we're responsible for on a daily basis and making sure that they're safe. And that's just the population. That doesn't include visitors who are coming to our community. Brief overview of the history of the office. The state actually started off the Office of Emergency Services as an emergency council in 1929, what followed up by the Council of Defense, that then became the War Council, that then became the Civil Defense in 1950. The Office of Emergency Services in San Mateo was actually started in 1963 as an independent county department. At that point, we had 440,000 residents in the county. In 1997, the Sheriff's Office took over the Office of Emergency Services, and following September 11th, 2001, we actually merged with Homeland Security to where we're at now with 758,000 residents. What we've been able to do and obtain through grant funding that has not actually impacted the JPA budget is developing a plethora of resources that people can actually call upon of any community. Things that you see listed there that I particularly want to call out is the Air Squadron that is available to anybody, the Marine Unit, the barricades that are being used on the 4th of July parades in many different communities that are listed here. And obviously you see there, we also have mobile command vehicles, emergency operations center, oil spill trailers that have actually been used in San Mateo. And then I think the last thing for me I really want to point out is radios. We have a lot of extra radios that are laying around so that when an emergency hits, we can give them to the first responders who are coming into our community. We're still getting to a point of emergency operations and interoperability, and slowly but surely getting there. The last slide I really want to just provide to you is, again, when people ask what is it OES does, we prepare. And so if you look at the slide listed in front of you, you'll see a listing of annexes and plans that does a small spattering of what it is that we have. We are currently updating several annexes and plans: earthquake, care and shelter, utilities, and civil unrest. Unfortunately, these are items that we have to obviously be very vigilant for, but we also need to prepare for as often as possible. What we do is we get a plan or annex, we send it out to subject matter experts, we ask members of the community to give us input, and then we get the plan back and update it as appropriate. Does anyone have any questions for me? Okay.
Why don't you move on to item 2?
Absolutely. So item 2, there are 2 things that were asked to be addressed. The first thing is, as you can look around, you can see that we're actually very a little bit light on the attendance, and that usually ends up happening in the June meeting. What has traditionally ended up happening is the June meeting has almost always been canceled as a result of not being able to establish a quorum. So what we'd ask to do is see if we can actually get a motion to go ahead and cancel the June meeting so we'd have 3 meetings a year.
Okay. Is there anyone who supports that or does not want to move forward with that? Or does someone want to make the motion?
Through the chair.
Yes. Mr. Medina.
I would just say that obviously it has been in the past. I would want to see it still available on the calendar. Should there be matters that are important to staff, we meet quarterly, 4 times a year. These are important topics. To just have it go away altogether, I would be against that. But to have it with the agenda and items that staff needs to bring forward to us, I would say I'd leave it up to the discretion of staff whether or not we have enough for an agenda in June, in my opinion.
Is that a motion?
This is further discussion.
I tend to agree with that because I was thinking, I don't know why I'm tired today, so I'm not asking very many questions, but I was thinking with the weather coming up, are we going to be having issues with high heat that we need to be worried about shelters and, people dying? So I would prefer to see, like was mentioned, to have it on the calendar and to decide then whether or not it's necessary to meet in June.
Supervisor.
Yes. Ms. Schneider.
I agree. I don't like the idea of canceling it. I know that I sent something to Supervisor Canepa, being that we're at a BART station and with any transit-oriented potential terrorist activities, that's something we can put on the agenda that affects at least those of us in the North County. So there are things that I don't know what to do should something like that happen. And since it's happened in England, it could very easily happen here. So I just want to make sure that we're not keeping the ability of learning what we should be doing. Transit-oriented disasters of one form or another.
Through the chair again, the only thing I would say on our, as a council, we have to be mindful too and reach out, especially in June. And when we're asked as a reminder, do we have a quorum, we all need to respond so that staff can prepare adequately and see if something can be done online or via emails rather than being present if we can't make it. So I think it works both ways in this case. Just another point.
Through the chair. Excuse me.
Sylvester.
I'm kind of new to this committee. And Bill, if I didn't see you guys in June, I'd go through withdrawals. I really love being here. So,
Thank you.
Is that considered a motion then?
Yes. Ms. Beach.
Thank you, Supervisor Canepa. I would just say that if staff senses by May that there's not enough content that requires us to meet, that we try to make the decision a month in advance. Everybody's calendars are really busy, so we don't just wait for the quorum factor. If there's not applicable content, then go ahead and cancel it, and if not, we can have our meeting. Thank you.
Great. Mr. Medina, do you want to state your motion?
I'll go ahead and say that we maintain the June calendar as far as having our quarterly meeting. And if staff determines that it is not necessary, that they can go ahead and reach out, as Ms. Beach said, in the month of May in order to inform the board and the council. Also on our end, we need to reply back to staff and let them know too. So that's my motion.
I'm just going to take a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Motion passes. We're off to OES calendar. Stephanie Murty. Miss Murty?
Actually, Supervisor, I'm sorry. We have meeting minutes just real quick.
Okay, sure.
So the meeting minutes, one of the things that came up is I actually talked about there are several apparently issues that may have taken place with making sure that our meeting minutes were verbatim. In years past, we've actually tried to make them as verbatim as possible. The problem is that it is staff labor intensive, and I was concerned about making sure we made sure that there's an accurate reflection. So in checking with county council that we have for here at the office, we found out that actually there's no need to go ahead and record written record of it. Instead, it can be exactly what we're doing right now, which is recording the video presentation of it, putting it online so everyone can go ahead and review that to see if there's any concerns. A video record is actually much better because you actually get people who are actually involved, and you go also record all the votes as they're taking place. So the motion that I would ask for is if we could actually stop doing the meeting minutes unless there's a specific issue that we need to go ahead and call out, like a vote on a record. And otherwise than that, have the meeting minutes be reviewed online so that way we can go ahead and approve the meeting.
Does anyone have a question? Yeah.
We do.
Mr. Reed?
So that means that the video minutes are kept, right? They're history, they're not just ditched after 20 days or something?
No, that is absolutely accurate. When your assessment, we actually take all the video, we actually keep it online. Anyone can look at it at any point.
Thank you.
Through the chair.
Yes.
I do think that, because this is quarterly meetings, so it's usually about by 3 months that we'll have the next meeting. It's time consuming also for the council members to go through the video to make sure that we're fresh on the current topics or events or the reports. So if there's any way that you can condense it and not verbatim, I am not asking for verbatim, but I do think that we need to have a summarize of a minute so that at least the council members would have an opportunity to look for them if they so choose to look the videotape. But it's helpful for us to be reminded what's been discussed in the past and what's moving forward in terms of project or subject matters.
Mr. Adiego?
Supervisor Canepa, I concur with Maria 100%. And actually, sometimes when I read my verbatim, I cringe. So if we could move away from that, I'm all for it.
Are there any? Mrs. Beach?
Thank you, Chair. I agree. I think we need written minutes. It takes, we have a tremendous amount of committee responsibilities that it's very helpful to refresh. I won't repeat that concept. What I like about, it's always discretion, but what I don't like is when meeting minutes could be written before the meeting. And it basically just summarizes what's on the agenda, because I think often there's important questions that are asked from electeds when we represent the people who are overseeing this that sometimes spur follow-up actions. And if those conversations and questions are lost, I know that I tend to look at the meeting minutes from the last year's budget meeting just to refresh where we were. So I find great value in meeting minutes that actually have a degree of detail. It's always discretion. I don't think every single quote needs to be put, but if there's a major question or a concept that was discussed, I find that very valuable. So I just wanted to put that up for discussion among my colleagues. And I appreciate that it is staff intensive, but I think also for documentation of what we're doing here, it's far more accessible than watching an hour-long video, which is important too. And I think we need that transparency as well.
Mr. Weist?
I agree with Emily. One additional add is I use your written copy to circulate, so with my colleagues. So I may not have time to review a video prior to, but I do review the minutes and I also circulate them. So that's kind of an important. Thank you.
Through the chair,
Mr.
Mr. Medina.
I'm just kind of I'm getting consensus from my colleagues is that we don't need it verbatim, and nobody would ask staff. That's I don't know many city clerks that do it verbatim, but it's more highlighted and or action items is what we're comfortable with, is what I'm hearing. So I would go ahead and make that as a motion if that's what you're looking for. That minutes remain and are kept and taken as in written form, but they are not verbatim.
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Fogarty. OES calendar, Ms. Murty.
Hello, everyone. This evening I will be sharing the annual OES calendar, which was included in your packet, and giving a brief overview of its contents. So as you've seen, the calendar that looks like this, and also I have extra copies later if you would like one, highlights training opportunities such as Incident Command System and Emergency Operations Centers training, also special events such as the county fair and OES-led exercises in addition to state and regional exercises. The purpose of this calendar is not only to continue to organize and plan internally at OES, but also to inform and encourage outside organizations and local jurisdictions of upcoming opportunities that they could take advantage of to increase their capabilities. For example, and as you have already heard, the Cal OES California Specialized Training Institute, also known as CSTI, hosted the Emergency Essentials course, also known as Earthquake class, in San Mateo County. The overall participation, as you'll see to the left, there was 84% non-county participation and 16% county participation. By non-county, the other is broken down into 65% was city representation, 25% other counties such as San Francisco, Alameda, and 4% non-governmental organization, and 4% education, and 2% business. Moving on to Yellow Command exercise, that is upcoming on June 29th, and thanks to the Urban Area Security Initiative, also known as UASI, OES is hosting the Yellow Command tabletop exercise in Belmont, which will exercise our county's multi-agency coordination in regards to our sheltering capabilities. For this tabletop, and as of this morning, the overall participation shown to the left is 29% county employees, and that 29% is actually broken up into 5 different departments that are being represented, and the 71% that other participation includes 63% represented by cities, 25% non-governmental organizations, 8% private sector, and 4% state. So given the diversity of the participation, OES is very confident that continuing to share this calendar will support the needs of many of our partners and jurisdictions to continue the participation and continue on the path of becoming more prepared and resilient community. I really thank you for your time. If you have any questions regarding this calendar, I will take them now.
Is there any questions for Ms. Murdy?
I'm just curious.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, yeah, of
Who is
course.
state?
State would be Cal OES. So we have Cal OES representatives that will join us. Any other questions?
Any additional questions? All right, thank you, Ms. Murdy.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 4, one concern, Mr. Waterman, James. Good evening, Mr. Waterman.
Actually, sir, my name is Greg Brunel, and thank you, Chairman.
Oh, Greg
it's
Brunel.
Quite all right. Mr. Waterman got tied up with another commitment, so I appreciate the gift of your time.
We're
this
glad you're
evening
here.
For just a few minutes, so thank you very much. So, Greg Brunel, and they're going to bring up our slides, and in the interest of time, I will be very quick. We were asked by the Sheriff's Office to stop by and give you a quick overview of some of our capabilities that we've brought to Woodside Fire Department now. Just met with the fire chief again this morning, and we're working in Los Angeles and San Francisco as well, bringing this capability to bear. So I'm Greg Brunel with One Concern, and my role there is to bring emergency management and public safety experience. Previously, I was a firefighter and county emergency manager in New York State, and then I worked for 3 governors, culminating my appointment as director of emergency management for New York State by Mr. Cuomo, right in the middle of Hurricane Sandy, which was an interesting time. And with me are my colleagues from One Concern, including Liz Dalton, who was a senior appointee with Mr. Obama for 8 years at the Department of Energy, focusing on global climate change and energy emergencies. And I'm just going to wait until they click through, but I'll start, actually, in the interest of your time. One Concern is a new startup in Palo Alto by 3 recent Stanford graduates who are using artificial and machine learning to bring us to the next generation of hazard identification and damage assessment. Highly predictive, highly reliable damage assessment at the building level that allows us to, in all phases of emergency management, mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery, achieve true community resilience, which I heard mentioned this evening, as well as your HMP plan. If we could click through a couple of slides, please, sir. Jeff, thank you for this. Appreciate it. So our singular focus, because our CEO, our Stanford grad, Ahmed, is from Kashmir and is an American citizen now. His family survived a tragic earthquake many years ago, and then just a few years ago, they spent 7 days on the roof of their house during a flood, while many of their neighbors did not survive. So he came back with a singular focus to help the United States and the globe get stronger and better in damage assessment with earthquakes, and has built One Concern based on that. And what we see in the United States, despite how advanced we are in public safety and emergency services, is still the inability to accurately understand where damage is. I know this personally. You've seen this in your region as well, so I won't give anecdotes and stories tonight. But just one from the Napa earthquake. Most of the 911 calls we get come from less damaged areas than the areas with the most damage because critical infrastructure like phone lines and cell towers are down. So we don't know in public safety, we don't know in the Emergency Operations Center where the heavy damage is. This can take hours and days to understand that, and people are waiting for us to get in there and save them. Slide, please. Right now, the tools, particularly in earthquake that we have, are pretty static. And these are good tools, but they're 30 years old. They're based on old technology. HAZUS, ShakeMap, ShakeCast from USGS. They're sort of spray paint on a map that give you zip code level damage estimates or city level damage estimates. Slide, please. Does this clicker work if I use it?
It should.
Okay, then I will stop being impolite and say slide. And they do that very broadly. What it doesn't show you is that building level damage. I also heard mentioned building inspectors. We need to bring those people in as quickly as possible to understand. But with highly reliable, highly accurate engineering-based models, we can understand what is going to be red tagged right away and how many people we have displaced. And are they going to be displaced for a couple of days or for weeks and months as their homes are rebuilt? One quick example from Napa, the left slide, both homes were built in 1942, similar construction. So on the current technology you have available to you and your OES office has available, you would expect both of those homes either to be damaged or not damaged to the same degree. What actually happened in Napa was the home on the right was not damaged at all, and the home on the left was lifted 12 inches off its foundation, making it red tagged. And what the story behind that is the home on the right was retrofitted, and those records existed, but they weren't taken into consideration in the tools OES and community planners. And when you're making decisions about tax and relief for people who make those investments in resilience, you have that available information. So it's antiquated data. It takes a long time and a lot of energy, a lot of people to put that antiquated data in. And it's two-dimensional statistical methods. What the team at One Concern has done is they're using artificial intelligence and state-of-the-art dynamical modeling, as well as so much that we've learned in the last 30 years since the tools that exist and that we're using now have been developed. We know so much more about our natural environment, how sand and soil behave for liquefaction. We understand how water behaves, how buildings behave, and we've changed our built environment dramatically in that time. As you can tell, I'm moving through this quickly. So what our tool provides for you, and more importantly, for your Office of Emergency Services and the Sheriff's Office and local fire departments, is you can run simulations that show, and pick your spot. I want to do magnitude X at this hypocenter, at this epicenter, on this fault line for this duration of shaking, and run a simulation. And I'm going to show you what you get out of that. But I'm going to pause right here and also point out that 15 minutes after an earthquake happens, we're tied in with the U.S. Geologic Service. 15 minutes after the earthquake happens, you're going to have an 85% accurate picture at the building level of the damage in your communities where we have the built environment. So first you're going to get that from USGS. But day to day, they can run exercises and scenarios which bring you, and what I've done here is we've sanitized this a bit. This is an actual scenario in San Francisco, and we don't publicly release building level damage for a lot of reasons you can imagine why we don't want to show which buildings may fall down. So this is at the block level, but we do it at the sub-block level. Let me be clear. So you choose what you want to see, and you can see the level of damage right there and turn on and off those filters. 15 minutes after a real earthquake, this is what would be showing up in the Emergency Operations Center. And with the data layers you have on demographics of your community, as well as voluntary reporting of people who need assistance, persons on oxygen, people who are diabetic perhaps, who go to dialysis, and other demographic information, you can turn on and turn off those filters on the left. And here we see, based on the number of homes and the population density of those homes, we can see how many people are affected, how many households are displaced, the level of damage, as well as the cost, and how, as this is updated in two ways. It's updated from continuing incoming information from USGS, and if there's an aftershock, the system uses machine learning to update this across the entire ecosystem again. And as public safety and building inspectors go out and validate that data, the machine takes it in and updates it and propagates it out across the spectrum as well. So you are quickly, within a couple of hours, depending on your ability to penetrate the area, going from our 85% accurate model to above a 90% accurate model. And at that point, the return on investment is very low because now you know where your pockets of damage are. So you can very quickly go in and target urban search and rescue teams. You can target other technologies that you have at your disposal, like drones and what have you, to go in and confirm and deliver goods and resources, and also figure out what routes of travel are going to be available to get in and out. And you can build into our system incident action objectives, which transfers knowledge from community to community, because what we're doing in San Mateo needs to be happening in Palo Alto, needs to be happening in Woodside at the same time, the same incident objectives. We can also put our resources in here across the community, and this is a, forgive me, very simple mock-up because we're using jurisdiction-specific resource iconography on the mapping. So we just put some symbols up here to show you, but you can show where you're going to deploy your resources rapidly. We also know in mitigation, and you've gone through your hazard mitigation plan update recently, and you're continuing to focus on that, and sincerely, I applaud you on that as an old mitigation planner. We know, and we've been saying for 30 years, that for every dollar of mitigation investment we make, we see $4 in return. That number is antiquated as well. In both flooding for building level damage, and I'm going to show that in a second, as well as earthquake, it's a 1 to 60 return. It's a massive return. And this tool will allow you to run different models so you can show citizens, if we make this investment in retrofitting, if we build these buildings like this or move things here or there, we can see that return on investment by decreasing the numbers in the top left for the damage. Let me walk you through very quickly what we're doing with flood concern. Right now, we have 3 tools. We have National Weather Service, who do the absolute best that they can, and they're fantastic partners. Sometimes they miss the mark. A little chaos theory built into that. But we get forecast 48, 72 hours ahead of how much precipitation is going to come in, and then real-time weather mapping. We get our stream gauges, but that just shows what the water's going to do, and then we see where it's going to peak, and we use local old-time knowledge to figure out where does the water go the last time it flooded like this. And we have our flood maps from FEMA, and they do a good job, but they don't take into consideration the built environment. So these are static tools on the right in particular that don't give the emergency management and public safety community the real-time data they need to plan. And where do we evacuate? Where do we put sandbags? What sort of long-term mitigation steps do we take telling people to flood-proof or flood-resist homes? And when you're rebuilding your community or you're deciding, as you know, in community planning meetings, where are we going to put a shopping plaza versus a daycare, what kind of tools do you have available? And they're very static and they're outdated. What we watch through here is we watch the actual flood over in San Jose, which we modeled accurately to 85%, 3 days out. And as you watch the water flow, you can see how it goes across the built environment. What I did not layer into here or have layered in, there's people much smarter than me putting these maps together, trust me. What is not layered in here is the same red, gold, and yellow building damage that you would get. And you can watch the evolution of the flood, and on the bottom, you'll notice the timeline jumps. So you can see how the floodwaters will behave, and you can see the iconography for the critical infrastructure. The depth is to 1 inch depth, so you understand that. And also the length of the arrow shows the velocity of the water. So we're using those metrics to measure how the building will be damaged. And when you're in the deep blue for deeper water and longer arrows for greater velocity, that's going to pick up material. And we know that really moving water, it doesn't take a lot of water to move a car, to move a dumpster, so it can tell you what your debris issues may be as well. The other neat thing we can do from an emergency management planning standpoint is step in and say, okay, well, the flood's going to come and we know it's going to do this. What if we put sandbags over here? Now we can see how the water behaves differently behind that. We may not be able to stop all the water, but by just reducing it, because we're usually fighting for inches in floods, let's get that from a foot of water down to an inch of moving water, and it will do much less damage and it will dissipate more quickly. Here's the Oroville Dam, and you can see beforehand. And on the bottom of this particular pop-up box, we're also tied in with these stress monitors at the dam, so we can see how the dam is going to behave. And in this case, if the dam, so we fracture that and say the dam breaks, and we walk through a similar scenario, so you can see how the water would behave, and you can also do flood mitigation steps with that. The last piece is we can apply both global climate change as well as other parameters like a 100-year flood, 150-year flood model, and then we can change based on internationally agreed upon standards for carbon emissions across the globe at this, not standards that we're trying to achieve, but rather what the expectation is now. How will water behave differently in the future? How much water will there be in the atmosphere? What will the temperature be at that point? And for coastal areas, this is particularly important with sea level rise. So you can manipulate the tool in an innumerable number of scenarios and figure out what your future will look like. It really does achieve community resilience. It does support the entire spectrum of your infrastructure so that everyone can participate in this, put all of their assets in it, put all of their plans in it, and truly understand. And it leads to global learning because all of the We run every earthquake in the globe now. Our modelers sit in Palo Alto, and when the ground shakes somewhere in the globe, above a certain threshold, of course, because the ground's shaking all the time, as you know far better than I, but above a certain magnitude, we run those models and compare and make sure that we're hitting that 85% accuracy, and we've been spot on every time. So that's who we are, and we hope with your blessing we'll continue to speak with County Emergency Services to bring this county-wide in the coming
Thank you very
months.
much. Are there any questions? Ms. Chuang.
Thank you for your presentation. My question is, you allude to the fact that your model, you can anticipate the damage or the scenarios in real time. Is that what you're saying? And then with the field reports, then you can fill in the blank and adjust and tweak it accordingly. But your 85% accuracy stems from that you can anticipate, your AI is anticipating the disaster, the scale of the disaster with the information that you have, and then and anticipated that is what's going to happen.
Yes, ma'am. So if whatever the plausible worst case scenario is, and you can move that epicenter up and down whatever fault line you choose, make it whatever magnitude, and then with various data sets, daytime population versus nighttime population, deployment of resources, you can take that sensitive dependence on initial conditions and run innumerable scenarios to say this is what will happen, this is the evolution. But most importantly, to your point, ma'am, the building level damage, you begin it at 85% accuracy, and 15 minutes after that ground shakes, that's what you'll have in front of you to say, here is what happened in our community. And then the responders who are going out anyway will quickly be able to validate that.
Thank you.
Ms. Schneider and then Ms. Hurt.
My geography degree loves this. Can you, for example, an earthquake, could you take our communities based on the main fault lines and the lateral lines, predict or tell us which houses should be retrofitted or which businesses should be retrofitted before another area?
Yes, using we can show where the greatest damage would be, and that obviously then helps prioritize what areas should first receive mitigation focus.
And I would assume that that's the same for whatever disaster. So floods, there'd be certain areas, fire, other areas.
Yeah, and the neat thing with flood is you'll be able to go in and run innumerable scenarios and finally say, you know what, the next time we have a devastating flood or a presidential declaration and we receive dollars, we'll do buyouts over here. Or we'll take this type, or we'll do elevations, or we need to redirect with a new channel or return a space to the natural environment, which is always the
Do you have any examples where your data has been helpful to a community to say, yes, we need to invest more earthquake retrofitting money into XYZ structure? Or is it a little too soon right now?
It's a little too soon right now. We're just getting started with some of the big communities domestically, and frankly, a couple in New Zealand soon as well.
Christchurch had a big one. Did I get the right city? Was it Christchurch?
Christchurch,
Yeah.
ma'am, yes, two. One was very devastating.
Great. Ms. Hurt.
So I'm curious about the sources that you rely on for crunching this big data. Are they primarily county or private sourcing?
It's an absolute mix, ma'am, and it's a mix of both open source data from real estate and a myriad of other open source data that anyone could capture, but then we work with the jurisdiction specific to what sources you have. And then as you identify critical infrastructure, say you have a hospital and you want us to really map that hospital or a school, we would go and work with that building engineer and say, because in many times it's, well, this part of the hospital was built in 1950, and then we added on this wing, and then we retrofitted this way. And that's where we bring our advanced engineers in to say, okay, this is how your building's going to behave. I can absolutely get you information, and our technicians, the people smarter than me, ma'am, can come in and speak to you, and certainly the members of OES, about the fragility functions and how they do the science behind this at the very specific building level.
Thank you.
Mr. Otaki.
Thank you. First of all, I'm the alternate for the city of Menlo Park for Catherine Carlton, who is unable to be here today. But I did want to ask a question about if County OES is considering licensing this, would it make it available to the cities so that we could run some scenarios? And I'll give you a concrete example that I'm thinking about based on this presentation. We're considering potentially down the road perhaps a soft story retrofit ordinance. I'd like to be able to run some scenarios and look at what is the impact on our housing stock, particularly soft story multi-unit buildings that we have all over Menlo Park, and I'd like to be able to model based upon, whether it's a San Andreas earthquake or a Hayward earthquake, and be able to quantify that to help articulate whether or not it's a good idea to do that. I know the Association of Bay Area Governments has just put out a soft story retrofit ordinance model over in the East Bay that might be something that might be useful, but unless I kind of understand that risk-return trade-off, it's hard for me to then be able to encourage my community to adopt it. So this would be a very good tool to be able to do that, but I'd like to be able to have access to run that scenario. So is that something that's being contemplated as part of the discussions between One Concern and County OES?
Very initial considerations, sir, very initial conversations, and obviously every
So
scenario.
maybe possibly add that as part of your scope might be
the
very helpful.
biggest return on investment for this solution is frankly across the entire geography.
Got it.
So we're in Sacramento as we speak, speaking with the state of California as well.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Beach.
Thank you, Supervisor Canepa. Just to follow up on Councilmember Hurt's question about the data, the input data, I just want to make sure I fully understand that. You mentioned open source, but so are there records that you know which buildings have been retrofitted and which have not? So that's how you input into your source?
The communities give us that information.
And so that's pretty intensive, but that's part of your process. Are you using GPS to look down too? Or are there, is there voluntary data that's coming in?
Voluntary from residents or building owners?
Yeah, yeah.
We haven't had to engage the public, and we're getting a little out of my vocabulary, to be
Okay.
honest, ma'am, as to how that data is collected.
And you mentioned something even about people with certain health issues and risks. You used an example, somebody who's on dialysis. I mean, that's data that can be in this as well?
That's data that can be in it. We're completely secure. We're on Amazon's cloud, which is one of the most, if not the most secure in the world. And that information, typically communities have some sort of voluntary reporting of persons with special needs or functional access issues. That's something that the emergency management and public safety communities wrestled with for the last 30 years, in voluntary versus voluntary. And I think we've all come to voluntary. So these aren't medical records we're collecting.
Okay.
This is
I'm thinking obviously of privacy concerns
This is
here. so.
very much, if someone has signed up to be, hey, I live here, or my mom or dad live here, please check on them if something bad happens, that's what we would have.
Okay.
There are also public health records that show densities that are a little more aggregate, may not write down to the address, but rather this is an older area, or this is, we're working with some East Coast cities I can't quite speak about yet on social equity issues, because the people who suffer the most during natural disasters are frankly the people who have the least. And so we're putting in some economic information as well as education and what have you to show where a natural disaster, in that case it's a flood, how that would exacerbate or create food deserts, limited access to water, limited access to healthcare where limitations already exist, and how if we don't focus on rapid recovery and temporary provision of services in those areas, then those people will suffer even more.
Okay. And then just my one last follow-up. You mentioned you worked with the city of San Jose during the floods. Were you working with...
No, ma'am, we didn't work with the city. This was just the model of the
So
city.
modeling, okay, so
We
you
modeled the
modeled
city.
after the fact. Are there any cities in the Bay Area that you've worked with successfully prior to?
We're just starting with
Just
San
starting.
Francisco and Los Angeles and Woodside.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Great. Are there any more questions? Seeing none.
May I?
Yes,
Last
Mary.
questions, just a follow-up. So you seem to suggest that depends on the local agencies or whoever your clients are. They can articulate the purpose that their interests, and you will be able to tailor your model according to their discussions and to be able to provide a far more accurate data. Is that how the work is working? Okay.
The more intense the relationship, the more we can work together, the greater not only the data and the outcome and the accuracy, but also the overall usefulness of the tool. Because if you put your resources in there, then you can better map where you're going to deploy your resources using the same tool.
Thank you.
I'll stick around, sir. I know we need to be short tonight, so I'll
Great.
step in
Thank
the
you
back
so
and be
much, Mr.
available.
Waterman. Really appreciate your presentation. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
American Red Cross, Go Fanai. Mr. Fanai, is he here?
Good evening. My name is not Bill, but it's Al Malamo. Gofanai is his name. He just became a parent, so he's on paternity leave in his first child. I'm a volunteer with the Red Cross, and just to give you an update as to goings on, of course, we had an active shooter yesterday in San Francisco, and the Red Cross is actively supporting and partnering with the county agency in San Francisco. We have a service delivery site open at Cordon Bleu to support those folks, the employees that were working in that office. So we have mental health as well as health services there presently. Yesterday we served about 250 meals for those that were affected, the families, first responders, et cetera. That's a normal reaction or response for us. To bring you up to date the sort of things that we've done as far as responses, since the numbers I have here go back to January. So we've had 33 responses in San Mateo County. Most of those are single-family fires. We've assisted 187 clients, of which 17% were children. That's 32 children were assisted. Some things that that we've done as far as activities, our home fire campaign that we're partnering both with fire as well as police. Home fire campaign is where we go into households, excuse me, and assist them in making sure their smoke alarms are working. We install free smoke alarms and give them some education as to preparedness, how to evacuate their home, etc. So we have two of those events coming up. One is over in Pillarcitos, Mobile Home Park in Half Moon Bay, and the other one is down in Menlo Park. And I don't have the apartment complex, but I know that we have a multi-phase program going on there. We participated the day before yesterday, or what today is Thursday, I guess it was Monday or Tuesday, in the Redwood City Kaiser pediatric surge plan exercise. That went very, very well. Also, we participated in the Preparedness Day, beginning day of the open day of the county fair. And one of the things, last thing that I'd share is that we have a big program coming up towards the end of the calendar year that will start on September 23rd. You can hear a lot about it. It's a national event that Red Cross is putting together. It is called Sound the Alarm, Save a Life. And our goal is to do that home fire campaign that I just mentioned to 1 million homes within about a 2-week span. So that goes, the dates of that will be September 23rd through October 15th. So you'll be hearing much, much more of that. Can I answer any questions or comments?
No, thank you very much for your presentation. Okay.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers for public comment? No. We don't. Thank you very much. Board members, are there any announcements? Ms. Beach?
Thank you, Chair Canepa. It's not an announcement. I just had, is this appropriate time to a brief request or to of staff or a question to pose to my colleagues? So thank you for your incredibly hard work in the presentation. I was just wondering if on the agenda, if there could be on future agendas a little bit more context for what some of the topics are. I think all of us are pretty adept at making decisions that we need, but there's a few items on the agenda I didn't really have the context before, and it would be helpful, I think, in the interest of transparency for people who want to come to our meetings and know what one concern is, like a little explanation of one concern, just a one line, what that could be, or what the issues are with the OES calendar. I think that would be helpful to me, or if there's any presentations, that would be
Absolutely. We'd be more than happy to do that.
Thanks, I appreciate that. And if we could post the slide presentation for the OAS responsibilities, I think that's a great presentation as well, just to have linked to the meeting tonight.
Great,
Absolutely.
thank you, Ms. Beach. Ms. Schneider?
I just wanted to, because we have county people here, we had a knifing incident at our library last Friday. The sheriffs were there immediately. They arrested the gentleman, but what I'd love to do is give a big thanks to the county library system for the training that they provided their employees. We have a lot of children that hang out at our library. It's our one public square, and they got those kids in the library immediately, and they protected those kids. So hats off to the San Mateo County Library System and to all the first responders.
Mr. Otaki.
Thank you, Supervisor. This is also along the lines of a request or a suggestion for future topics at subsequent meetings. I know there's a whole series of Bay Area regional disaster plans and each of the counties have are working on adapting those plans to their particular jurisdictions. There are a couple of plans that I think would be of interest for some of the electeds up here in knowing about plans such as the regional logistics, catastrophic earthquake logistics distribution plan that talks about how do we get food and bottled water distributed after a major earthquake. There's also a plan on donations management. There's a plan on spontaneous volunteer. How do you handle that? And the reason I think many of these my colleagues might be interested in it is I think we can be of help to OES in whether it's identifying points of distribution within our cities that and potentially identifying potential volunteers outside of the normal CERT program that might be willing to help and staff and do some of that. So potentially pre-identifying some of that might be a capability that we can provide and help you as you're going through the process of applying, and many of these plans to this particular county and to our cities. So I simply suggesting that. The other reason is I know a year from now in April, the USGS will be announcing its Haywired scenario more publicly, although it's available now. For a earthquake on the Hayward Fault, but with a significant and serious aftershock on the San Andreas Fault. And many of our cities are going to be asked, well, what are you guys going to do about it? And I think it would be helpful to have some of that background so that we will be able to say to our residents, yes, we're aware of that. We work with County OES. They're great, and here are some of the plans that they're working on, which will allow our communities to recover should that event happen. And of course, we hope it doesn't, but there is a certainly high likelihood that in our lifetime we may have a significant earthquake. So being able to be knowledgeable, I think, and informed about that plan, I think we could help OES in your planning and getting ready for those events.
Through the chair, if I may just answer that real quick. So I actually think that's a local emergency manager who actually works for all of your cities who should be presenting that material to you, and they should be giving it to you for review. We definitely would encourage them to then provide us with the information so that we can map it appropriately, because that is one of the projects that we're working on. So I would definitely encourage that. And obviously, one of the things that another person on the council actually asked about is participation exercises, so they can see what we're doing. That's the reason why the calendar was created, so that way everyone have an opportunity to participate. So if you choose to participate, please let us know so we can go ahead and do that.
Great. So appreciate your help in pointing us in the right direction.
Absolutely.
When you see those things, those plans get distributed. So
thank you.
Great.
Thanks.
Is there anything else? Any new announcements? Well, I'll just close with this. I'm really impressed. I know in June meetings we haven't had a quorum, but thank you for all showing up. I know one of our members has a root canal. I know the other one of our members came all the way up from the fine city of Daly City, but I really want to thank you for all your efforts. Thought the comments were great and the engagement was great. With that, can I get a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn. Second. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you.